Welcome back to the Saints and Alumni Show right here on WVCR 88.3 The Saint. I'm your host this week, Brandon Murphy, class of 2017 from the Office of Alumni Engagement. And this week I am joined by Steve Zaccari from the class of 1989, a retired school teacher from the South Colony School District, but also the lead vocalist of the band Holler Tau, a fan favorite of Alumni Weekend, who will be playing this Alumni Weekend, May 31st through June 2nd. A reminder to everyone listening today on the Saints and Alumni Show, a bi-weekly podcast highlighting members of our Siena community, that there are a few ways to listen, such as WVCR 88.3 The Saint, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple, and of course subscribe to the YouTube channel to watch the complete selection of shows. Steve, it's great to have you in studio today on campus. Welcome back. How you doing today?
Great. Pleased to be here, Brandon. Thanks for having me come here today. I'm looking forward to all your questions.
And we got a lot of questions today. We got a story to paint from the early 1980s all the way up to present day, and then highlight what's going to happen in the next 2 months with Alumni Weekend. But the first thing I want to ask you, it's tradition on the show, and that is kind of how did you end up at Siena? When did Siena get on your radar, and what did you study here?
Well, that's pretty elongated question, but I'll simplify it with I was a senior in high school, and I was planning on looking at colleges a little late in the game, but my best friend was coming to Siena with his mom. His mom wanted him to go to a nice school, and she had scoped this place out, and I was along for the ride, and right when I got here, I fell in love with the campus, and we had a great tour. I'm into sciences, and at the time, the chemistry department didn't have much, but they told me that they were going to build it up into something a lot bigger than what it was. So my science of preference is the division of chemistry. So chemistry is the name of the game.
And it's funny that you mentioned that, because you had to park down by the construction site here on campus, which is the new science building, Noble Hall, which is going to be completed in about a year now. January 2025 is this expected completion date. And the academic side is just kind of one side of your Siena experience. And I want to dive into that with music. And you have a really interesting story with some students and a professor, how you were in a class and that kind of developed into a music scene at Siena. Can you talk a little bit about kind of how you got involved with that music scene at Siena through a classroom, I think?
Yes. Well, first came the professor. The professor was Ed Crossan. He was a wonderful professor that was in the mathematics department, and I had to take Calc 1, 2, and 3. I didn't have much of a background in math during my senior year at high school because I decided to take a mathematics vacation. And surprise, surprise, they threw me into calculus, and they said, "You got the brain power to do this." So with his help, I came to office hours, and he was a great man. He really was fantastic in helping me get through the course. He knew I was ready to work hard, and he set the bar within reach, and I succeeded and made it through that class. And then how this got into the music thing was in another science class, physics. I was taking electronics. Unbeknownst to me was his son, Sean Crossan, who Sean I became a good friend with. And Sean was a wonderful kid, and we had musical interests that were the same. He was a big fan of Jim Morrison and the Doors and a whole bunch of other bands. And one thing led to another, and he invited me to listen to some records, bootlegs of the Doors. And this is before bootlegs were very commonplace. And I went to his place, and next thing you know, we struck up a friendship, and one thing led to another. And he said, "I'm looking for a lead singer in our band." And I said, "I thought you had a lead singer." He's like, "Well, this guy, he doesn't want to be a lead singer. He wants to be a harmonica player. He doesn't really want to sing." So I went to one of their practices, and I was kind of shy, and they asked me to sing a song. I did Riders on the Storm, and next thing you know, their lead singer came out with a stack of books and said, "You're it, buddy." So that's how that all started out.
So just to follow up with that, though, I'm curious, and our listeners might be curious too. Did you sing growing up? Did you have any like buddy tell you, "Hey, you're a great singer. Go find a band"?
No, actually, kind of weird. I would sing to albums in my room and not sing to anybody. The only time I'd ever be caught publicly singing live was that same best friend that took me to Siena College. Ironically, it's going to be like 6 Degrees of Stevie Z.
I like that
Anyhow, my best friend used to have me down for dinner, and his parents always wanted me to sing Sammy Davis Jr.'s The Candyman. Don't ask me why. And the only other time I was bullied on the bus at in my grade school days, and back then, I don't know why, but I always picked sing a song, and everybody on the bus was like, this guy might be crazy.
So you join this band kind of impromptu way at Siena, but with the band comes making music and performing music and maybe traveling locally. When you were at Siena specifically, did you write any songs? Did the band collaborate and write any songs? Did you play at Siena? Anything like that?
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. Well, it kind of was a strange occurrence because we all had a connection to, here's the 6 Degrees again, WVCR. We were all really adamant about trying to get VCR on the map, and back then, I think it only had an AM bandwidth, and they were just about on the brink of getting FM, and that was going to be the big deal. So we all had like radio programs, and that was kind of our, our side hobby, and we all had musical interests that were along the same lines. We did like to write music, and a few songs that I wrote on an album called The Sound Asylum, which was eventually produced and made in 1993, long after I graduated. Some of those songs that are on that album actually were written at Siena College. So yes, we did write songs, and we did play out. We played for different occasions at Siena College. We played in the Foy Campus Center when they used to serve beer and have
the Rathskeller.
Full houses. Yeah, the Rathskeller and all that. And you had to be of age to get into it. And we played, Muddies too back in the day. This was before it became whatever it is now.
Yeah, it's still there.
It's still there, yes, but God only knows what it could be now. And we played a lot of parties, and I hope that I don't get a bill for any of the townhouses that might have gotten a scuff on the wall or anything like that. But yeah, we were familiar at a lot of those events, and some of the big parties of the late 80s, there was one called the Dirt House Party, which had mountains of people at it, and it's over by Latham Beverage. We played that, and it's funny because some of the originals, I run into people years after graduating, even as much as a decade, and they'll be singing me the song all the same to me and saying, "Hey, did you ever get that signed? Did you ever do anything with it?" I'm like, "No, maybe someday, but not presently."
And you have such a great journey with music, and it started out with the one professor. I'm curious, was there any other influential community members at Siena that maybe you had a relationship with? Was there somebody in the school with creative arts, with music? Was it a friar? Was it an academic advisor? Anybody that you became close with and had a relationship?
Well, it's still close with Father Dennis Tamburello. He's still here. As a matter of fact, I saw one of his posts on Facebook today from the church or the chapel, and we kept in contact quite a bit. And but other than that, we pretty much we dealt with the other kids that were involved in music too, and we had almost like how Haight-Ashbury out in California had the whole hippie scene. We kind of had our own little thing here at Siena that was kind of a wonderful experience, and I've always carried that in my heart long past. And when I play here for the alumni weekend, I always like to pick a few of the old songs that we played, just in case some of the old folks, the
roadies
show up, and they're like, "Hey, let's hear that," and get them singing along. It's really nice, really nice.
Well, we just got about under 5 minutes left in the first segment today, and there's a few other questions I want to get to, and we just talked about influential community members, but as we begin to paint this picture in the second segment about your music and teaching. There's a few questions left, and the first one is any musical inspirations that you had that you look back on, either that you loved going to live music and watching them, or that you took as influence when writing songs yourself.
Oh, geez. Well, it's kind of funny because most of the folks that remember me at Siena College probably remember a spring weekend of '88 where I came out draped in an American flag, a top hat, and wire rim sunglasses, and they all like, it looks like Uncle Sam's up there. Obviously, I kind of stole that idea from the Grateful Dead. Which there was quite a lot of people interested in the Grateful Dead at that point. Jerry Garcia was still alive, and people would go to like spring tours and all that. There'd be a lot of excitement on campus when that was taking place. The other one that I can't deny is when people would see me on stage, they'd say, Steve kind of reminds me of Mick Jagger, Jim Morrison.
Oh, wow.
And Joe Cocker rolled into one. And I'm thinking, geez, I mean, it looks like I'm having, epilepsy and, and keeping it all together all in one swing.
And we got just under 3 minutes left now. And, we're going to keep talking about music in the second segment, but we're also going to talk about your time as a teacher in the South Colony school system and highlight Alumni Weekend. And I just want to conclude the first segment today by asking you, how you left Siena, how you felt it prepared you for your academic career, how the science classes shaped you and made you passionate about becoming a teacher.
Yeah, it was kind of all building blocks. When I left Siena, I really wasn't sure what I was going to do with my career path. So initially, I decided to get a job with a small company in downtown Albany, which is still there. And some of the people that I used to work with back when I started in '89 are still there. It was called Adirondack Environmental Services. And I worked there as a chemist. I learned a lot of stuff. And they had me go down to GE Selkirk as a on-site chemist. So I worked there for a number of years. And then as I worked there, they always got me in these situations where they'd ask me to train people. And all the trainees would say the same thing. Geez, I wish I had a guy like you when I was in high school, because if I had a guy like you in high school, I'd have your job right now. And I'm thinking, well, maybe eventually it'll hit the bell in my head and go, ding, maybe you should be a teacher. So having those experiences and everything it was all like building blocks. It built me up to becoming a teacher. And when I did it, I wasn't displeased at all. I was so grateful that I took the path that God had set out for me to do. Learn the ropes before you get in front of an audience.
Well, we're going to talk about you being in front of the Alumni Weekend audience in the second segment, about making an album, being a teacher, coming back to Siena as an adjunct professor, and all the events on Alumni Weekend. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back here on the Saints and Alumni Show. Welcome back to the Saints and Alumni Show right here on WVCR 88.3 The Saint. I'm your host this week, Brandon Murphy, class of 2017 from the Office of Alumni Engagement. And this week I'm joined by Steve Zaccari from the class of 1989, a retired school teacher from the South Colony School District, but also the lead vocalist in Howler Tower, the band that performs at Alumni Weekend, and will be at this Alumni Weekend, May 31st through June 2nd. We're going to conclude today's show by highlighting some parts of Alumni Weekend, but it's obviously a big component is the music. We have DJs, live music, your band throughout, and I kind of want to dive into making an album, producing live music, and traveling, specifically when it comes to you and your band, Steve. So after college and in between and producing an album, can you give our listeners a little bit of insight into the process of making that album? Were you one of the lead writers on the album? And kind of how is that like for you?
Yeah, I'd be more than happy to talk about that. Well, when I left Siena College, myself, Sean Crossan, and Dan Maroney were three people that had graduated Siena College that we wrote the songs together. And we eventually decided that it was time to record it. I was pretty adamant about getting these babies of ours on record, So at the time, things were changing over from going from vinyl to CDs. So that was a decision-making process of, finances. How are we going to have this done? where are we going to have it done? So we had to select a studio. We had to shop around. We went with Cotton Hill Studios, a local place on Walker Way. They had a grand piano there, all the right facilities, reel-to-reel, Tascam recorders. So everything that they had was what I wanted. I didn't want to cut corners at all. I wanted to make this thing so that you could hear the grand piano, the foot pedals, that you could hear the Hammond organ when it kicked into high speed, and all that. I wanted a quality product. So it took a lot of investment, and before we did that, we spent hours and hours preparing with the individual tracks, singing, giving ourselves singing lessons and all that kind of stuff, doing 3-part harmonies. It was a lot of work. And then in February of that 1993, we hit the studio, and we worked really hard for an entire month, buying up time and doing it all. And then we had to get it set and get the artwork done. The artwork happens to be done by a guy named Dennis Murphy, who was the drummer's cousin. Now, an interesting fact about the drummer is Scott Underwood, who's in the band Train. So, his a lot of talent in that family. Yeah. My God. So, yeah. So anyhow, we had to get the artwork done. We had to get all the stuff in place. We got everything. By the spring of that year, we finally debuted the album, and there it is.
So I'm thinking, Billy Joel, right? He produces an album, and then he goes out on the road and plays the album. For a band like you, is it something where you also released this album? I'm looking at it now, still in its wrapping as well from 1993. Did you produce the album, release it, and did you hit the road? Did you open up for anybody, or did you headline?
Yeah, we did. We did a bunch of touring. We started out pretty much in the local area. We did like Saratoga Springs. We did Westchester County. Then we expanded into New York City, playing places like the Wetlands Preserve. We played on 2nd and 13th at Nightingales, where Blues Traveler started out. In fact, one night there was actually some members of Blues Traveler there, and of course I didn't believe them until the guy pointed at the picture behind the pool table and said, "Does this look familiar?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, that's the bass player of Blues Traveler, standing right with John Popper." So that was kind of wild. And then another chance that we had to brush with fame. We were playing in Joyous Lake Music Club in the Catskills. It was actually in Bearsville, where we were sitting. We get done with our set. We get done, and we're sitting down. A guy asked me to come over and sit at the table. Next thing I know, I'm conversing, and I'm like, this guy looks familiar. I didn't realize next to my right elbow, I was literally rubbing elbows with Dave Matthews and his entire band, and I didn't even realize it. So that was kind of a wild experience. So another brush with fame that we had was we played an annual festival in Ellenville, New York, and we had the opportunity to play multiple years with a guy named Buddy Cage, who he was a pedal steel player for New Riders of the Purple Sage, and he's also well known for being the pedal steel player on Bob Dylan's infamous Blood on the Tracks album. So that was pretty intense, being able to play with a professional, and not only that, having him call for us every year after that when we played that particular festival. And we did headline a festival out in somewhere out in Pennsylvania, where I didn't even realize we were the headline. And unfortunately, my nose was broken, and it was 95 degrees out. And they said I was the headliner with the Sound Asylum. And I'm like, are you sure you don't have us mixed up with Soul Asylum, Runaway Train? Because that's not us. And guy's like, no, Behind the Eight Ball. That's you, and we want you. And I'm like, okay. So we had some great experiences on the road, and it was all because we invested in the product and made it such a high caliber product that's still on Spotify and all the stations that you had mentioned for our podcast.
So we got just about 7 minutes left in today's show, and we wanted to kind of now pivot the conversation over to teaching as well. And you're doing music full time, you're on the road a lot, you're even working full time and then traveling to the city and then coming back and working the next day. And so life on the road is challenging. At what point in time did you make a decision to, kind of balance it out and pursue this teaching path that you were on?
Well, it was the spring of '96, and we were touring pretty heavily and intensely. We were doing everywhere. They were doing all of I-90 on New York State. We were in Massachusetts. We were doing Vermont, New Hampshire, Connecticut, New Jersey. I mean, we just kept going and going, and then eventually we said, "Hey, let's take it down to Florida." So we cruised down to as far south as Clearwater Beach, playing a place called Gasoline Alley. That was our furthest point away. We made a live recording about that. And when we got back, it was just very exhausting because some nights you get great pay. And then other nights, you got the bar owner looking at you saying, it was middle of the week. We didn't really advertise you guys that well, and it's kind of like, can you work with us? And as soon as they say, can you work with us, you're going to take a hit, and it's not going to be pleasant. But having the ups and downs financially, it kind of is a little maddening because you have a successful product, you got qualified musicians that are worth what you're asking for, and if you can't deliver on those promises, like, hey, I'm going to get X amount of dollars per show, eventually your musicians are going to, start, complaining and saying, geez, what's going on here? And you got to remember back in those days, we didn't have the internet to promote us. We didn't have a website. We didn't have any of that stuff. So we just did mailers, like little postcards that we would sit around and have a couple cases of beer and everybody would be licking stamps. Talk about old school. So so we were up against some hard things, and it would have been a lot easier if technology was there at that time. It wasn't, but eventually we just said, look, we're getting to the point, we're getting in our late 20s. I think it's time to start pursuing a career. And I thought about it long and hard with what people said to me in the past at GE and Adirondack, that I'd be a good teacher. So I pursued teaching at the College of St. Rose, which sadly is now going to be closing its doors. I got my master's degree there, and then I began the teaching career in the 98-99 school year. So with the music, the past experiences, believe me, I came in like gangbusters being a school teacher. The kids loved my style because I'd bring up musical references, real-world analogies, a lot of lab stuff, a lot of things that kids could get their hands on, and that's, to me, the successful way of teaching.
And we got time now just for two questions left in today's show. It goes by too quickly every time. But the last two questions really kind of, tie it all back to Siena. And the first one that I have for you is, did you ever come back and teach or be involved within the academic programs at Siena?
Yes, actually, after a few years had gone by with my teaching career, I'd say I was at probably somewhere between 15 and 20 years of teaching. I guess the word got out about my style. And there was a man here named Dr. Jury who was in charge of the education department. And he reached out to me and said, would you like to be an adjunct professor? And I said, well, I never taught at the college level. I mean, this is the big leagues, this is Siena. And
Division I.
yeah, we're Division I here. So I don't know if I'm cut out for it. He goes, no, you are definitely cut out for it. I have my feelers out there, and you're the guy we're looking for. So I ended up working at Siena for quite a number of years as an adjunct professor for the education department, specifically science, like teaching science, specifically teaching chemistry. So I mainly focused on those students that wanted to become chemistry teachers. So we had a few coming through here, that are still out there,
plugging away. And to conclude today's show, we want to just highlight Alumni Weekend, May 31st through June 2nd. Registration is now open at siena.edu/alumni weekend. The Alumni and Family Picnic has now been rebranded to Bernie's Block Party. It will be Saturday at 1 p.m., and your band will be the opening act, headline per se, beginning at 1 p.m. You always come back and play for the Alumni family. What do you enjoy most about it, and what are you looking forward to being back home in June?
Oh, I just have such a great time being here because they really have a great spread here. It's they have all the food trucks set up so that you can pick and choose what you want to have. They have the full bar, which I'm never going to complain about that. Hint, hint. The stage setup is always wonderful for the musicians, and having a sound man is dynamite. We always get to mingle both before and after with the people that are there, and it's so nice to catch up with folks that I haven't seen in years. I really hope that everybody can come out. If you remember Steve Zaccari, I was the years from 85 to 89. I was kind of like the crazy whirling dervish. I'd be running around the stage. I hope to see you.
Well, Steve, it's been great having you. And it is your reunion year this year,
35.
1989.
Yes.
It's a big one. There's also the 80s Decade Party on Saturday night as well that will highlight for you and welcome you back home, too.
I'm planning on being there.
We're excited to have all reunion classes coming back home to Siena. It's also open up to all alumni to come back and celebrate those milestone reunions. Again, Steve, thanks so much for being on the podcast today, sharing about music. I know we could do a whole series on this with you. It's been a pleasure. We'll see you next time right here on the Saints and Alumni Show. Have a great weekend.